real pleasure to be invited to this and also to offer comments on common ground. Water availability and quality matter to our economy and our livelihoods. That's part of the common ground. Beyond that, I'm not sure that there is as much common ground as we might like to think in this province about how we ought to manage water. I agree with John Donner, we need better integration. There's still a great deal of jurisdictional fragmentation and economic territoriality with respect to water. But part of the common ground that does exist is that we still respect one another and can talk together, as we've done this morning. I've been in other parts of the world where that's not the case. But that may not still be the case after the third year of a 5-year drought. And elsewhere, a crisis was required before water-scarce nations and states within them began to change their policy frameworks and practices. I hope we don't have to go that route, talking from an outside perspective. We have the science, we have the technology. I've been to Pine Creek and to the new plant at Bearspawn. I'm amazed with the city of Calgary, and also what EPCOR have been able to do. We have the ingenuity, we have the intelligence to learn from others, and to go right to the front of the global queue in terms of land-water relationships and land-water management. I disagreed to some extent with the title of this morning's forum. Alberta, from my experience at least, is not a leader in water management. I believe that there's a lot of stars, but we still are not a fully formed team. But we could be. Yes, I think we need to value water more highly. I think we agreed on that this morning. We need to learn from others, and others can teach us a great deal. But what is missing is a vision of the West we want. And I agree with Barry Warbitz. He makes a very good point. The moratorium on water licenses in the South Saskatchewan marks the end of the frontier. And it's no longer possible for everyone to do whatever they want, whenever they want, where they want. And when you listen to Jim Osterban, I think you learn from that that doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. We need to decide what kind of West we want and start working toward fulfilling that vision. We need a larger goal to aim for so that the management of water and land and the relationships between that and atmosphere fall into a larger idea of what we want to pass on to our children. Thank you very much.
I think there's a lot can be added, except just to summarize maybe where some of the common ground lies. It seems that there's a consciousness of the need to conserve, that major efforts are being made by all the sectors. Perhaps the thing that can be added there is more recognition and rewarding of the people that are making these efforts. And by rewarding, I mean financial rewarding, not just recognition in the newspapers. Second thing, everybody's mentioned technology as part of the solution, and I think there is a tendency to hope and pray there's some technological fix for all of this, and undoubtedly technology's got a huge role to play, but I think there's a big disconnect between a lot of the talk about technology and, again, applying it. I don't think if you look at that list of Canadian companies that do R&D, I don't think there's a single Alberta company in the top 35, and there's only 2 oil and gas companies in that category. So there's a lot to be done to actually apply technology in a systematic, consistent way. Everybody seems to have mentioned market mechanisms in one way or another, and I personally believe that market mechanisms have a lot to contribute here. But there are a huge number of problems, and the main one being the equity problem. That markets aren't fair. They don't start out to be fair. They're an efficient way to allocate resources. If you create an equity problem, like for the agricultural sector, the irrigators said that has to be addressed almost as a separate problem. But I think more attention to how to make the market and pricing systems work would, in a practical way, would be a very worthwhile investment. Just 2 other points. One is that I think there's analogies between the development of the energy industry and addressing these water problems. Like our first senior regulatory body for oil and gas in this province, what was it called? The Oil and Gas Conservation Board. It was actually set up to control the flaring in Turner Valley. That's what it was set up for. Whether there's the Water Conservation Board or some equivalent like that, I don't know, but there's an analogy there. Also, if you look at how gas distribution and was organized in this province through the Alberta Gas Trunk Line program, where you had all the interests, the owners, the province, the producers, the distributors got together, and they were the shareholders and the controlling shareholders of a company whose job was to gather the gas and deliver it to the border. and where the common shares were used to raise a whole pile of money to invest in that system. If you read through the old Alberta Gas Trunk Line Act and substitute water for gas, you got a very interesting model on more of the private sector side as to how to raise money to do a lot of the things we're talking about other than through taxation. And then the last thing I'd add, whatever solutions come up with, or partial solutions, or steps along the way, if you're trying to sell those to a caucus or a cabinet committee, if you cannot put those messages in their politically communicable form, so that a politician sees how to communicate within about 90 seconds at the beginning of your presentation, the communications aren't right. Because the politician's sitting here and saying, if I go outside this room and the CBC or the CTV lady sticks her mic or camera in front of my face, can I explain what the position those people were trying to get me to take? If that person can, then they'll listen to all the rest of the argument. If you don't answer that question, you get cognitive dissonance with the politician.